The Incident at Dyatlov Pass. Welcome back to another episode of Spooky Hunt, the home of all things scary and hair-raising on YouTube. From the most thought-provoking unsolved mysteries to the creepiest ghosts and ghouls, we have all the spooky content you will ever need. Subscribe to the channel now so you never miss any of our latest and greatest videos. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the incident at Dyatlov Pass. Let's get to it. In January 1959, a 23-year-old hiker named Igor Alekseyevich Dyatlov led a journey to reach the peak of Otorten, a mountain in the northern Urals of Soviet Russia. The young man brought a team of 8 experienced hikers, many from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, along with him for the adventure. Before he left, Dyatlov had told his sports club that he and his team would send them a telegram as soon as they returned. But that telegram was never sent, and none of the hikers of the so-called Dyatlov Pass Incident were ever seen alive again. When their bodies were found in the coming weeks, their strange and gruesome injuries left investigators baffled and repulsed. Some were missing eyes, another was missing her tongue, and many were struck by a force comparable to that of a speeding car. But no one could make sense of it. The Soviet government closed the case quickly and offered only thin explanations, saying that the hikers died due to hypothermia because they were inexperienced and that maybe something like an avalanche was at fault. But with that explanation, clearing up almost none of the lingering questions, amateur sleuths had been puzzling over the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident for the last 60 years. And while the Russian government did reopen the case in 2019, we still don't know exactly what happened on that snowy mountainside all those years ago. The hikers entered the Dyatlov Pass. Based on what was recovered from cameras and diaries discovered at the site of the hikers' deaths, investigators were able to piece together that on February 1st, the team began to make their way through the then unnamed pass leading to Otorten. As they pushed through the hostile climate towards the base of the mountain, they were hit with snowstorms that ripped through the narrow pass. Decreasing visibility caused the team to lose their sense of direction, and instead of moving toward Otorten, they accidentally deviated west and found themselves on the slope of a nearby mountain. This mountain is known as 𝐭𝐡𝐢𝐤𝐞, meaning dead mountain in the language of the indigenous Mansi people of the region. To avoid losing the altitude they had gained, or perhaps simply because the team wanted to practice camping on a mountain slope before their ascent of Otorten, Dyatlov called for camp to be made there. It was on this solitary mountainside that all 9 hikers of the Dyatlov Pass incident would meet their demise. When February 20th rolled around and there was still no communication from the hikers, a search party was mounted. The volunteer rescue force that trekked through the Dyatlov Pass found the campsite but no hikers. So military and police investigators were sent in to determine what had happened to the missing team. When they arrived on the mountain, the investigators weren't hopeful. Though the group was made up of experienced hikers, the route they had chosen was remarkably difficult, and accidents on these tricky mountain trails were a real danger. With the hikers having been missing for so long, investigators expected to find an open and shut case of a horrific accident on treacherous ground. They were only partially correct. They found bodies, yet the state in which the bodies were found only raised more questions. Starting on February 26, the discoveries of the bodies opened up the true mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident that continues to this day. When investigators arrived at the campsite, the first thing they noticed was the tent had been cut open in a way that soon proved to be from the inside and that it was nearly destroyed. Meanwhile, most of the team's belongings, including several pairs of shoes, had been left there at camp. They then discovered 8 or 9 sets of footprints from the team, many of them clearly made by people with either nothing, socks, or a single shoe on their feet. These tracks led to the edge of the nearby woods, almost a mile away from the camp. At the forest edge, under a large cedar, the investigators found the remains of a small fire and the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonoshenko, 23, and 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐿, 21. Despite temperatures of -13 to -22 Fahrenheit on the night of their deaths, both men's bodies were found shoeless and wearing only underwear. They then found the next 3 bodies, those of Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, 22, and Rustam Slobodin, 23, who died on their way back to the camp from the cedar tree. While the circumstances were odd, investigators found that the causes of death were clear. All the hikers, they said, had perished from hypothermia. Their bodies showed no indication of severe external damage beyond what had been inflicted by the cold. However, this didn't explain why 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞 was brown-purple in complexion, or why he had gray foam coming from his right cheek and gray liquid coming from his mouth. Furthermore, This didn't explain why the hands of the two hikers under the cedar were scraped away and the branches above them were torn down, as if the two men had tried desperately to seek shelter from something or someone in the tree. Meanwhile, Slobodin had head injuries consistent with someone falling and hitting their head over and over again, and Komogorova had a baton-shaped bruise on her side. These two hikers, as well as the others found by this point, were also generally underdressed and wearing some of each other's clothes, only supporting the idea that they had fled suddenly and without adequate preparation into the freezing night, despite being experienced hikers. It wasn't until the other 4 bodies were found 2 months later that the mystery deepened even more. An even grislier scene in the Dyatlov Pass den. The remaining hikers were discovered buried under the snow in a ravine 75 meters deeper into the woods than the cedar, known as the Dyatlov Pass den, and their bodies told even more gruesome stories than those of the other members of the group. Nikolai Thibaut Brignoles, 23, suffered significant skull damage in the moments before his death, while Lyudmila Demina, 20, and Semyon Zolotarov, 38, had major chest fractures that could have only been caused by an immense force, comparable to that of a car crash. In the most gruesome part of the Dyatlov Pass incident, Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, part of her lips, as well as facial tissue and a fragment of her skull bone. They also found the body of Alexander Kolotov, 24, in the same location, but without the same kind of severe wounds. This second group of bodies suggested that the hikers had died distinctively different times, because they appear to have been making use of the clothes of the people who died before them. Dubnina's foot was wrapped in a piece of 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐞's wool pants, and Zolotaryov was found in Dubinio's fall fur coat and hat, suggesting he had taken them from her after she had died, just as he had taken clothes from 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐞 earlier. Perhaps most mysterious of all was that the clothes of both Kolotov and Dubnina showed evidence of being radioactive. Due to evidence like this, even with more bodies found, the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident only grew more baffling. The Soviet government closed the case quickly and gave only vague causes of death and speculated that the hikers' own incompetence may have caused their demise or that a natural disaster was the culprit. Early on, many Soviets also suspected that the hikers' deaths were the result of an ambush by the local Mansi tribesmen. A sudden attack would account for the way the hikers fled their tents, their disarray, and the damage done to the second group of bodies. But that explanation fizzled quickly. The Mansi people were largely peaceful, and the evidence in the Dyatlov Pass didn't much support violent human conflict. For one, the damage done to the hikers' bodies exceeded the blunt force trauma one human could inflict on another. There was also no evidence of any footprints on the mountain, beyond those made by the hikers themselves. Investigators then conceived of a swift, violent avalanche. The sound of snow collapsing in early morning of the deluge to come would have frightened the hikers out of their tents in a state of undress and sent them sprinting for the tree line. An avalanche would also have been powerful enough to inflict the injuries that killed the second group of hikers, but the physical evidence of an avalanche just wasn't there. And locals familiar with the terrain later said that such a natural disaster simply wouldn't have made sense in the Dyatlov Pass. There was also the fact that when investigators found the bodies, they noted no evidence that an avalanche had occurred any time recently in the region. There was no damage to the tree line, and searchers observed no debris. Moreover, no avalanches had been recorded at that site before, and nor have there been any since. Furthermore, would the experienced hikers have made camp in a spot that was vulnerable to an avalanche? The avalanche hypothesis was characteristic of most of the theories put forward in the early days of the mystery. It offered a quick, superficially plausible solution to some aspects of the puzzle, but utterly failed to account for others. With that, we've reached the end of today's video all about the incident at Dyatlov Pass. This one is truly a bizarre incident. Do any of you guys think you know what really happened? Get involved and let us know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, make sure to leave a thumbs up so we know to make more for you. Also, subscribe to the channel for even more awesome videos just like this one. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time on Spooky Hut, where we always have tricks and treats for you.